What's up, addicts? We are going to go through our Week 5 DraftKings and FanDuel picks of the week, getting you guys ready for Week 5 in the XFL. But hey, if you're new to the channel, just want to ask you guys to please hit that subscribe and that like button. Really helps us out a lot, helps us grow this channel, and really appreciate that. But anyway, let's get right into it. Alright guys, pretty interesting slate this week. We have a few games with a bit of a higher over-under and then some more looking to be low-scoring games. Going to diversify a little bit more this week. We did pretty good weeks 1 and 2, weeks 3 and 4 not as hot, so we got to get back. Really, we were one Cardale Jones hitting Rashad Ross on that deep ball play away from having a lot better time last week. Rashad Ross would have performed much better, but we've got to keep going, and we're going to figure out what the best lineups look like this week. So the process has been correct. It's just been trying to hit on the right players. So there's only been, on average, about 2 quarterbacks that have actually hit a high enough threshold to make them worth starting. If you want to hit in GPPs. And then defenses, there's still been a pretty large disparity between the best defense on the week and every other one. So we really got to make sure that we hit both ends of that sandwich with the quarterback and the defense. So we'll begin our analysis by looking at the guys that we're building our lineups around. So obviously, if you're going to spend all the way up, Phillip Walker is going to be a really good play again this week. Also really love Jordan Ta'amu, getting it done on the ground and in the play action game. Jordan Ta'amu looked really good last week, going up against a DC team that's been flailing. They are at home. This could be a very high score game. Jordan Ta'amu is another good player there. And then if you want to go for the knockout punts for the rest of your lineup, you want to just go cheap on quarterback, BJ Daniels is your guy this week at only $7,200 in DraftKings, only $17 on FanDuel. Going against Houston, this game is the highest over-under on the week. Seattle and Houston, should be a lot of points scored. Houston has been able to put up a ton of points, so that means Seattle is going to have to do something to be able to keep up with them. We saw BJ Daniels perform really well in St. Louis last week. St. Louis has a really good defense. Houston's without Coney Ely, so this should be a pretty high-scoring game, and BJ Daniels also gets it done on the ground. He scored 15 fantasy points last week just from running the ball mostly, and we'll see what he can do with a full game this week. So really love BJ Daniels a lot. So those are my 3 guys from the quarterback spot. From a defensive spot, we're going to go towards the lowest scoring game of the week. New York and Dallas should be fairly low score. We've got Luis Perez, who isn't really forcing the issue there deep downfield. Dallas is really good against the run, so it's going to be hard for them to do the same thing that they did last week with Darius Victor. So look for Luis Perez to throw his first interception this week. And then Dallas is without Landry Jones, going back to Philip Nelson. So you got 2 quarterbacks that like to throw the ball pretty close to the line of scrimmage. Not going to be a lot of scoring in this one. Look for there to be some mistakes, some sacks, hopefully a defensive touchdown. So Dallas is my favorite defense on the week, but New York is really cheap, as you can see here at DraftKings, $3,200. So that gives us a lot more wiggle room in our lineups. If you don't like either of those picks, I would target the Battlehawks defense. Again, they are in DC, so they might give up some more points, but they've been playing really well, and DC has been playing terribly. If that implosion continues, then it's going to be a really good thing to have the Battlehawks on your team. So that's kind of my diversification play. But as you'll see, the lineups I'm building today are really just centered around the Renegades and the Guardians. Okay, so let's build a couple lineups. These are GPP lineups that I am looking at based around those quarterbacks. We'll do one for each, and then I'll show you a couple more lineups that I have already pre-constructed. So we're doing one with Phillip Walker. Really want to make sure that we always have a good stack here, and obviously the stack didn't pay out last week, but as we now know, Dallas is really good at shutting down the #1 wide receiver. Seattle is not so good at doing that, so this stack should hopefully pay more dividends this week. And then Sammy Coates is out, and Seattle is also very bad at stopping the slot receiver, so we'll just do the triple stack here with PJ Walker, Cam Phillips, and Nick Hawley. From a running back position, my favorite running back on the week is Devian Smith. Now, you do have to monitor right now. He has been limited in practice. dealing with, I believe, a foot injury. So if for some reason he doesn't go, all you got to do is pivot down to Jacques Patrick. He's $7,000, so you can just do a straight up swap. But if Devian Smith doesn't play, Jacques Patrick becomes the best play on the week pretty easily. All right, so if we're going to go this expensive with our first 4 guys, we're going to need to save some money here. One of the value guys I love this week is Saeed Blacknell. The Wildcats let go of Kermit Whitfield, who is also seeing some deep downfield targets. Blacknell got targeted twice deep downfield, one for that 40-yard touchdown, and Josh Johnson is looking good. Also, Tampa Bay's biggest weakness right now is giving up the big play. So that's a perfect storm for a guy like Saeed Blacknell to hit it. $3,600. If he gets one big play, already 3X's for you. It's going to be a really... I like him a lot. You'll see him in a lot of my lineups. And then if we want to run it back with someone from the other team, you could go to Alonzo Moore. He was looked to be the guy that BJ Daniels was targeting pretty often at the end of that game against St. Louis. Definitely a a throw of the dart play here, but I do think that he has a pretty decent chance of scoring here, just considering how many points should be scored in that game. And then that gives us the ability to play the Renegades defense. So there's a Philip Walker lineup for you guys. Let's jump over it. We'll do a Jordan Ta'amu lineup. This gives us a little bit more wiggle room because we're saving $2,300. Sticking with the floor, even with Philip Nelson there, Lance Dunbar looked really good in week 1 with Philip Nelson and should be heavily involved in the receiving game. Definitely a good target for DraftKings. We can still stick with Cam Phillips here and really love Trey McBride a lot this week. As I mentioned, same thing for Saeed Blacknell. Trey McBride also getting targets deep down the field. This is the hardest spot for the Tampa Bay Vipers to defend right now, so we'll just do the stack with McBride and Blacknell there as well. And then this is kind of like a hybrid game because I'm not really interested in too many players on the DC side. We can kind of also stack up with the LA Tampa Bay game, which is the other highest over-under on the slate. So who should be back this week after practicing full all week and... considering as well that LA is one of the worst teams at stopping the tight end. Nick Truesdale is a pretty decent value this week. One thing I didn't mention in the first lineup for Devian Smith and why I like him so much this week, LA is actually surrendering the most fantasy points to opposing running backs out of every team in the XFL. So that's why if you have Devian Smith there, I think he's your best guy. If not, I think you want to pivot down to Jacques Patrick if he's out because, again, LA's given up a ton of points to running backs. And then with this is where we go to our cheap option at defense. We grab the Guardians. So there's a Jordan Ta'amu lineup. Let's do one more lineup builder like this. We'll go over cast lineups in a second as well, but we'll do one where we take BJ Daniels. So this gives us an even bigger wiggle room for our cap, so we can definitely shore up some more expensive plays. You could do Artis Payne or Devian Smith. I like them pretty much equally this week. Just for diversification sakes, we'll do a Cameron Artis Payne lineup here. All these example ones, I'm still grabbing Cam Phillips. Yes, he had a down week last week, but he's been such a difference maker every other week. And they still looked to try to throw to him a lot last week. They were just double covering him and playing press coverage all over the place. So Cam Phillips should have a much better week this week. We'll stack BJ Daniels with Austin Proehl. No team is worse against the slot receiver than Houston. So Proehl should have a pretty good week this week. And then Colby Pearson is also another interesting lineup play I like a lot this week. The Dallas Renegades are actually very bad against the slot receiver as well. So stacking up 2 slot receivers here. I've already mentioned why I like Nick Truesdale. They used their tight ends a good bit last week in their win against DC, and I would look for them to do so again this week, especially considering how poorly LA is playing against the tight end. And then you can grab the Dallas Renegades defense. So there's a BJ Daniels lineup for you guys. Like I said, I'll give you some more lineups here. Let's go over cash game real quick. So what we're learning more in cash games is one of the most important things, obviously, is getting that quarterback spot. We don't want to mess around with it this week. Make sure you either get Phil Walker or Jordan Ta'amu in your lineup. Those guys have been consistent studs. You want to make sure you get a decent production out of your quarterback position there. And then we want to hit up wide receivers who are getting a lot of targets. and have the potential to score a touchdown. And then obviously running backs that are getting a lot of carries and a lot of targets out of the backfield. So considering that shift around a little bit, trying to pivot off of some of them are higher ceiling plays, we could do something like Phillip Walker, Devian Smith, Colby Pearson, and LaDainian Washington. The scroll would want to work for me. I haven't mentioned LaDainian Washington yet. I think he's going to do really well this week. DC hasn't been playing very strongly against the wide receiver one, so a decent option there to potentially score a touchdown. And then we can shore this up with a Lance Dunbar or a James Butler, or actually both is what we're going to do here. Again, just securing a lot of those running backs who are getting a high volume of touches, both as carries and as receptions. So there's a good cash game lineup for you guys. If you wanted to alter this a little bit, go a little bit more risky, which you don't typically want to do too much of in cash games, but let's keep the stack, or we'll keep Phillip Walker in there, we'll keep Colby Pearson, and then let's jump up, we'll grab Cameron Artis-Payne. Still want to make sure we have a Tampa Bay running back there. Again, Devian Smith, or pivot to Jacques Patrick if he ends up being out, rolled out late in the game or late in the day, and then we'll grab Lance Dunbar. So grabbing both Dallas backs should be pretty heavily used there with Philip Nelson playing, and then a little bit more of a gamble, but we can go with Saeed Blacknell here. Still has a pretty decent chance at scoring a long touchdown, and if he doesn't do well, hopefully the rest of these guys can at least get us to that cash line hitting right at the middle. And then you can grab either the Renegades or the Battlehawks defense. I like the Renegades more, but you have enough money to do either here, so if you want to diversify a bit, you can do that. If you wanted to do Jordan Ta'amu in cash, you could do Jordan Ta'amu, Devian Smith, Cameron Artis-Payne, and Dunbar. So basically a similar lineup here, just switch into Ta'amu, and then you could switch Blacknell to Nick Hawley, which would be a pretty decent option, and then you just have to jump down to the Guardians. So let's just do that real quick for the heck of it. So we'll do Jordan Ta'amu, and where are you, Nick Hawley at 7,100, and then we can grab the Guardians. So there's another option for you if you don't want to pay all the way up for Walker, but you want to make sure you don't have to have a guy like Saeed Blacknell in your lineup for cash. Like I said, a little bit riskier. Probably want to avoid that risk here. And then if you really want to go a bit higher on your receivers and make sure you get some good plays there, instead of playing Colby Pearson and Nick Hawley, you could actually jump up and play Trey McBride, who I love this week. Looks like Nelson Spruce is going to be out again, so he should continue to be the main guy there in LA. And then LaDainian Washington you can grab. And then from a running back spot, we can grab, like I haven't mentioned him yet, but I actually do like Kenneth Farrow a lot. He's been trending upwards each week, had over 50% of the carries last week, and is getting the most targets out of the backfield. And then we could also grab James Butler from that Houston game. And then we've, oh, what did I miss here? Oh, sorry, this needs to be Devian Smith. I was like, all right, we got to make sure we get the Guardians in there, which I still like. I actually like Devian Smith better than Cameron Artis-Payne anyway. And then we can grab the Guardians defense. So there you go. Last cast lineup there: Jordan Ta'amu, Devian Smith, Trey McBride, LaDainian Washington, Kenneth Farrow, and James Butler. Let's go back to my lineups here real quick. Like I said, give you guys a couple more diversification options. You can see all the guys that I'm targeting on my website, fantasyaddictionnetwork.com. You can mix and match however you like. Here's 3 lineups that show what a lineup would look like with Phillip Walker. As you can see, I'm pretty targeting heavily Trey McBride and Cam Phillips. Really like those guys this week, but Nick Hawley as well. You can see Saeed Blacknell in a lot of my lineups. Let's jump over. These are my Jordan Ta'amu lineups. Got Devian Smith in some of these. Martez Carter is a name I haven't brought up yet. I should be back this week. If he's not, you can pivot down to DeJuan Harris. He's only a couple $100 less, but Martez Carter should get the start there. Not the best start this week, just because Tampa Bay is actually good at stopping the running back, but if you need a cheap running back option, Martez Carter definitely gives that for you. Lets you have a pretty powerful wide receiver and flex stack. And then we'll jump down to our BJ Daniels lineup. Again, this just gives you more flexibility, so you can do things like starting Cam Phillips and Trey McBride and still have money for James Butler and Nick Hawley in your flex. So different things you can do. You can even adapt this lineup a little bit, move James Butler up here, and then change Martez Carter to like a Saeed Blacknell or whatever you guys want to do, because Martez Carter right now coming in at 4,600, so you can sub out him, move James Butler up to the running back spot, and then flex in another receiver. So lots of stuff you can do when you have BJ Daniels in your lineup just because of how cheap he is. Okay, that's pretty much it for DraftKings. Let's do FanDuel real quick. Don't want to keep you guys all day. 2 lineup thoughts here. Again, we're just trying to almost employ the same philosophy that we do in cash games, just get guys that we know are going to hit. But obviously we want guys that can score touchdowns since this is half-point PPR. So Philip Walker obviously is always going to be a good choice. I think I've sold you guys on why I love Devian Smith this week. We're going to keep him in the lineup at all costs. Because again, if he doesn't play, you can still pivot down to Jacquez Patrick, only $1 less. So you're pretty much locking in that Tampa Bay running back spot against LA, who is the worst team against fantasy running backs. So with this lineup, we'll go a little bit cheaper on the wide receivers. We'll grab Nick Holley, and then we'll grab Colby Pearson, who I've already mentioned should have a really good week against Dallas, who's good at stopping the #1 wide receiver and really bad at stopping the guy in the slot. Then we can still grab a James Butler. Didn't do as well last week, but Dallas is much better against the run than most people give him credit for. Then we can still grab LaDainian Washington, who should have a pretty high chance of scoring a touchdown this week. So there's a decent lineup for FanDuel for you guys. We'll do one more, and then we'll let you go. So we got, let's do a BJ Daniels lineup just to kind of show you what you can do when you save the $6 jumping all the, whoops, don't want Brandon Silvers. Do not put Brandon Silvers in your lineup. Not a good idea. BJ Daniels, and then, as I said, Devian Smith is going to have to be in pretty much all of our lineups. Here we can actually grab the #1 and #2 receiver on the week, Cam Phillips and Trey McBride, because we jumped down to BJ Daniels, so this has given us a very high ceiling here. And then we'll also grab some Syed Blacknell, give us another high ceiling there, and then Nick Truesdale as well, all guys that stand a good chance at scoring a touchdown. And then same thing here, like Nick Truesdale has been actually practicing in full all week. If for some reason he gets ruled out late, you can just jump down to DeAndre Goolsby. It costs exactly the same, pretty much same thing in DraftKings. So no risk there. We're trying to avoid players that could potentially be ruled inactive like we had last week. The XFL has not been nearly as good at reporting their injuries as we have seen in the NFL. So there's another lineup for you guys. Really like that one a lot for FanDuel. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, please hit that like and subscribe button, and check out my website for a list of all the players that I'm targeting this week. Mix and match however you want. These are the lineups that I'm entering. I'll do a little bit more diversification for this as well. Just as many lineups as you want. Just swap in players that are around the same price point. Try to get the lineup that you feel most comfortable with. Anyway, thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.